It's your home for the first reaction and analysis after the Dogs play. This is DawgNation Postgame, brought to you by ServPro, Georgia Spa Company, Circle K, and the UGA Bookstore. Now here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Hello, Dawg Nation. Happy day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday to you, where Georgia here on the field at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta has gotten a 16-9 win over Georgia Tech today. I'll be honest with you, I was hoping for more from Georgia today than we got. This was one of the most anemic offensive performances that we've seen from Georgia in quite some time. Frankly, I'm having a hard time remembering a worse offensive performance than the one it put forth today. And yeah, more importantly, Georgia does get its 8th straight win against Georgia Tech. That sets a program record. Georgia's never beaten Tech in 8 consecutive games. Now it can say that it has. That's a big deal. And today, how happy were you for this Georgia defense? Because at various points in this year, we've obviously been talking a lot about the Georgia defense needing help from the offense, and the offense was doing its job. The defense was giving up big plays. We've said that plenty throughout the season. Today, that trend reversed itself, where today, other than Nate Frazier had a big game statistically, really nobody else from the Georgia offense, Zachariah Branch to a degree, but for the most part, nobody showed up big for the Georgia offense. Gunner Stockton, I think, unquestionably had his worst game of the season. And yet, when you look at what Tech has been doing offensively all year long, this was the number 5 offense in America coming into tonight from a yards per game standpoint. And yet, Georgia this afternoon, found a way to hold them to 9 points. That is worth celebrating. That is a big deal. And that, to me, is the number one takeaway here, that on a day in which, I'll be honest with you, I was hoping Georgia in its final regular season game would have the look of a national champion, would have the momentum that it showed probably on the road at Mississippi State, certainly a couple of weeks ago against Texas, and that it would get the convincing win against Georgia Tech that's eluded it for the last few years. Well, that didn't happen, but Georgia did get the win. It now closed out the regular season 11-1. It knows without a shadow of a doubt it's going to be in the college football playoff, and it simply waits. Does Texas beat Texas A&M? Does Auburn beat Alabama? Does Georgia get a home playoff game? Does it play in the SEC championship? Does it have at least some shot at maybe earning one of those top 4 seeds as a bye? Georgia is taking care of all of its business, and now that is the only next question remaining for UGA. But, of course, throughout our time tonight, we'll get into what we loved about the Georgia defense, the fact they stepped up huge when they had to, and, boy, we're thankful they did. Otherwise, we're probably talking about a Georgia loss here today. And at some point, I promise you we'll get there, how in the world did Georgia squander such a great effort from Nate Frazier in a day in which the Georgia running game overall at various points seemed to almost be unstoppable? And yet that didn't today become the building block for very much at all. That Georgia, I mean, Gunner Stockton on throws more than 3 yards down the field, I don't believe he completed one all day long. And I don't want to belabor that point necessarily, but I also don't want to sugarcoat either. Gunner had a bad game. The Georgia offense had a bad game. They probably were missing Drew Bobo. You know, Bobo was in, he was out, then he was out for the rest of the game. That's certainly a very serious injury situation worth monitoring, but we're led to believe that's probably one of the big things that hamstrung the Georgia offense today. But either way, so thankful that the Georgia defense over and over again kept stepping up. Tackles for loss for guys like Quintavious Johnson. Interception for Alice Robinson. There were some big plays on defense that helped get that done. So we'll get your phone calls here. Line up and get going. 678-645-DAWG. That's 678-645-DAWG. Want to hear from you about what you did like, about what you think is coming next for Georgia. And I'm sure you're going to want to get into what maybe happened on the offensive side of the ball. We won't shy away from discussing that either. Let's also get ready to say hello to Rodrigo Blankenship here, too. Rodrigo, of course, a great resource for us. And Rodrigo is a specialist. I know you're thrilled to see Peyton Woodring connect for Georgia on 3 field goals today. You needed every one of those 9 points. Arguably, that was the margin by which Georgia won this game today, including a 50-yarder on his final field goal try of the day. So you love that from Peyton Woodring, and I'm assuming you probably agree with my overall assessment and sentiment that if not for the Georgia defense, we're probably talking about a rivalry game that does not go Georgia's way and a regular season finale that would have landed with a dud. Thank goodness this Georgia defense prevented that from happening, right?
Yes, I absolutely agree with your assessment of the game. The Georgia defense played lights out today, not giving up a touchdown throughout the entire course of the game. As you mentioned, going up against one of the best, most efficient offenses that Georgia has played to this point in the season. One of the best offenses in the country in terms of yards per game. They really move the ball. They churn out clock. This Georgia Tech offense has been really good coming into this game, and the Georgia Tech defense kept them out of the end zone the entire game. So the Georgia defense was fantastic tonight. They played lights out. They did everything they needed to do. They answered the bell at all the right times. Had a couple of unfortunate missteps with a couple of back-to-back really big penalties that put them in a bad position, but they always stepped up to the plate, held Georgia Tech to field goals on all of their scoring possessions. So defense did a great job. And obviously there's a lot to talk about and a lot of ways that this Georgia team can improve for whenever their next game may be.
So I think you know how we like to do it here, Rodrigo. We want to strike the right balance because on the one hand, Georgia's finished the regular season 11-1. I'll be honest, when the season began, I don't quite know that I saw 11-1 in the cards for Georgia. I think I would have taken 10-2 and been very happy with that. So Georgia has, by doing this, exceeded my expectations for the regular season. And you and I both have said it. Boy, the Georgia defense, they deserve all the accolades you want to throw at them. And I want to make sure the balance of our show is mostly spent talking about that tonight. And yet, as a former player yourself, I think if you as a really smart guy too, you're astute with your analysis. Why do you think it is, and maybe a lot of this points to Drew Bobo's absence, but why do you think it is the Georgia offense struggled as bad as it did tonight?
I think there are a few reasons that you can look at. I think that Drew Bobo's injury and having some shuffling on the offensive line is going to be part of it. There's just everybody has new assignments. When you're in a new position, you don't always have the same responsibilities. And so with all the shuffling on the offensive line, I think that was a part of it. But I do think for the first time this season, I would like to, place a little bit of accountability on offensive coordinator Mike Bobo. I was singing his praises in the pregame show, talking about how I felt like Coach Bobo and Coach Schumann had done a really good job in the last 4 to 5 games. And the second half play calling, I just did not think was up to par with what he's shown us in the last few games. I felt like there was a very unsightly sequence that played out on multiple occasions for Georgia drives early in the second half where he came out throwing the ball on first down. It's an incomplete pass, so you have 2nd and 10. Then you try and run the ball, and you're running into extra defenders who are blitzing because they're anticipating a pass on 2nd and long, and so you're just running into extra defenders, and you get bottled up on 2nd and 10, and then you're in a 3rd and long. You have to go back to passing the ball, and then you have an incomplete pass, and you punt and go 3 and out. And I feel like that sequence played itself out multiple times early on in the second half, and it just really stalled the Georgia offense, where in the first half they had 3 scoring drives, you had 2 field goals, you had a touchdown, and I feel like the offense was doing some really good things, especially on the ground. And early in the second half, I feel like we kind of abandoned the run game and tried to start passing the ball a little bit more when we didn't really need to, and it just got the Georgia offense out of their rhythm. They just weren't very efficient. They were behind the sticks most of the second half. That doesn't really help. And then something else that I noticed, which I'm not too concerned about it, but I do feel like after the interception, I feel like Gunner Stockton lost a little bit of his confidence and a little bit of his swagger, where after that interception, there were some drives where he dropped back to pass. It felt like he wasn't really getting all that much pressure, but decided to pull the ball down and take off. Sometimes he was able to make something happen, and sometimes he wasn't. And I feel like he just got a little bit rattled and a little bit shaken up after that interception. And it took him a while to really regain his composure later in the game, to where we saw a couple more of those deep shots in the second half where he got his confidence back. So I think that all of those factors kind of contributed to this, as you mentioned, or very astutely put it, anemic performance from the offense today.
I think it's really interesting analysis, Rodrigo. I appreciate that. So we want to hear what you have to say. Give us a call, 678-645-DAWG. That's DAWG, 678-645-DAWG. You can also click the link if you're watching on YouTube or DawgNation.com or on Facebook. Click the link. You can join us there today. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this 16-9 Georgia win against Georgia Tech here today. Let's get Chris in Buffalo, New York. Chris, you're first up tonight on our DawgNation postgame call-in show. Georgia wins, gets to 11-1. 8 straight against the Yellow Jackets. What did you think about it tonight, Chris? We may have lost Chris. Let's try Joseph and Griffin. Joseph, you're next up on our DawgNation postgame call-in show. Joseph, what did you think tonight? How about them Dogs? They get a win. Maybe not the prettiest game we've seen this season, though. What'd you think?
No, it wasn't, Brandon. Hey, go Dogs. Yeah, like Rodrigo was saying, our offense kind of played a little anemic tonight. The defense came to play. And like you said, Gunner wasn't Gunner. I think he started listening to some of them press clippings and everything. He needs to get back, be humble again. and let's get ready for this playoff push. I think committee may drop us down to 5 due to this performance, but like you said, you got to take the win, and we're 11-1, and that's a blessing. So go Dogs.
Go Dogs indeed, Joseph. I appreciate that. And, keep in mind when you talk about the evaluation with Georgia and, other teams that, Tech did come in tonight ranked. Georgia did not beat them by the margin they were projected to, but this is still a neutral site win against a ranked opponent. This is still going to count for Georgia as a good win, even if Georgia didn't play its prettiest brand of football. Now, I'll tell you right now, if Georgia had somehow messed around and lost this game, and now you get into that 10-2 category, the overall conversation about Georgia at that point would have been really unpleasant, because there's nothing that the media types and the whatevers, the national people, there's nothing they hate more than bad offense. So they clearly would have beaten up Georgia for its offensive performance if there was much of a chance to make that evaluation. But sitting here at 11-1, having run through the SEC schedule and beating what was a ranked opponent coming in tonight, I think for the most part Georgia avoids all of that. But Rodrigo, I'll come back to you, because I think you said this really well earlier, that we really haven't seen interceptions be a problem for Gunner Stockton much this year. Did throw one last week against Charlotte. I don't really care that much about it. And if anything, I probably adopt the same mindset that Kirby Smart has had, which is they wanted Gunner taking shots and going deep down the field and trying to make something happen. So therefore, for most of this year, I think they've been willing to live with the occasional Gunner interception. But tonight, on the throw intended for Lawson Lucky, it was just off target. I don't know that it was a bad read or anything like that. It was just an errant throw, inaccurate in a way that we don't typically see Gunner Stockton be. And I think you bring up an interesting point. Did that shake Stockton's confidence? We did ask questions about his confidence earlier in the season. He's been playing the quarterback position about as well as anybody in America over the course of the last month, but that was not the case today. And I go back to what you said, which is, hey, was there a loss of confidence after what was not necessarily a bad decision, but just a bad throw? Obviously, if he's been confident for most of the second half of this year, we know he can regain that. But I am left to wonder how true that might have been, that Stockton just stopped trusting himself a little bit on a day in which they knew they could run the ball, and for the most part they did. They never really added any passing attack on top of that whatsoever.
Yeah, and something that I had mentioned during the pregame show, which unfortunately continues to ring true, and I think I may have also mentioned this at the end of our last postgame show when we talked last week, is, early on in the season, Gunner had been doing a really good job of taking care of the football, making good decisions, being on time, and being accurate with his throws. But going back to the Florida game, Gunner has now thrown interceptions in 4 of their last 5 games, pretty much all in the month of November. Gunner has accumulated most of his interceptions late in the season. And, to your point, part of it I do think is going to be the fact that Georgia is okay with a couple of them if he's taking chances downfield. We saw his first interception on the season, which was not part of these last 5 games against Kentucky earlier in the season. That was just him taking a shot downfield. Just ended up throwing into, double coverage, or the linebacker kind of fell off underneath the route and was able to get to it underneath. But as you said today, it was just an off target throw, and those are the ones that you really don't want to have. When you're taking chances downfield, it's okay, because we want to see that explosive passing game develop, as we've seen it happen in multiple games earlier in the season. But the off-target throws, or the late throws, or just the bad decisions where perhaps he's just eyeing down his receiver, where it kind of looked like he was today. He just kind of led the Georgia Tech defender into that interception with his eyes. Not being able to affect the defense with your eyes and just leading them to those throws. Those are the interceptions that you really want to try to avoid. So I hope that he's going to be able to bounce back and rebound. I know that Joseph had said maybe he was seeing too many of the clippings and maybe needs to humble himself. I don't necessarily think that is the case. If anything, I think that maybe Gunner was just feeling the intensity and the pressure of this game with so many, with such big playoff implications on the line, where they were showing the playoff predictor for this game. Georgia wins tonight. Even if they don't go to the SEC championship, the playoff predictor was giving Georgia a 77% chance to get a first-round bye in the playoffs, whether they're in Atlanta next week or not. And so maybe Gunner just felt the magnitude of the situation for the first time this week, like we haven't really seen all season, with such a big result looming, whether Georgia won or lost this game. And so maybe that led to it. But for the most part, as you said, Gunner's been rock solid this season. Obviously, the interceptions starting to pick up later in the season, as they have, is not great. But I believe that with more time, that Georgia is going to have leading into the playoffs, more time to make corrections, review the film, I think that the coaching staff will get him right, and then he'll be dialed in for this playoff run.
You saw the stats for Gunner Stockton, 70-plus passing yards, 42 rushing yards. A lot of that was on design run. Pretty clearly Georgia had seen, I would say, Tech's inability to stop the run last week against Pitt, and maybe came in with the idea they didn't have to do much more than that. But unfortunately, on top of 100-plus for Nate Frazier, 40-plus for Gunner Stockton, never really added any offense to speak of on top of that. Let's go back to phones. By the way, 678-645-DAWG, D-A-W-G, 678-645-DAWG. Also, if you're watching live on one of our video chats, click the link. You can join us via Zoom tonight, too. Let's get Chris in Buffalo, New York. He's back with us. Got a better cell signal now. Chris, you're in Buffalo, New York. You're here on our DawgNation Postgame call-in show. We're live at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. What did you think about this one here today?
Hey, BA, thanks for taking the call. All in all,
yes,
it's
sir.
a rivalry game. Crazy things happen. You take the win at the end of the day. Going into the game, I kind of looked at it as like a show-me game for both the offense and defense. Defense going up against a high-power offense, 450 yards plus a game. Offense going against a pretty benign defense in Tech. Love what the defense did. Offense, obviously, I don't want to beleaguer the point from Rodrigo. It just wasn't quite up to what we were expecting. The big thing is, the end of the first half play calling with 3+ minutes to go and all your timeouts and just kind of playing so conservatively for 3 points there when, even Jesse Palmer mentioned it on the broadcast. This is a great opportunity to kind of step on him a little bit, get the touchdown there, and then get the momentum going with the ball coming back in the first half. It just felt like that's kind of been a little bit of an issue this year of having teams down. And aside from the Texas game, where they really stepped on them and put the pressure on, they just Kirby and the guys haven't really done that, it doesn't seem like. Other than that, though, I'll take the win, and we'll move on to, the next couple of weeks.
Chris, I think that's a really good point about the end of the half. And Rodrigo, to me, I was looking at this. Georgia gets the ball with just inside of 4 minutes. I thought, at that point, you're up, what? Was it 10-3? Or 13-3. You had a chance to march down, score a touchdown, had the opening possession to begin the third quarter. There was at least a world in which Georgia could have been up 27-3, I guess, at the end of the first half and with the opening drive to begin the third quarter. But I agree with the caller. I felt like this was a clear and obvious situation where Georgia did not take full advantage of the opportunity that was in front of it, especially on the final third down play when Kirby called the first of his first half timeouts and really allowed about 15, if not more than close to 20 seconds to go off the game clock before calling that first half timeout. And look, I get the idea that you want to take it all the way down to the end. You don't want to give the ball back to Tech. But at that point, it was about giving yourself the best chance to take some shots towards the end zone. And Georgia didn't really do that there. Had to settle for the field goal. I think Chris is exactly right. When you talk about a day in which what could have been better for offensively on top of some obvious struggles and, frankly, uncustomary struggles, abnormal struggles for Gunner Stockton, the decision-making at the end of the first half, letting clock run out, not properly using your timeout, I think that's pretty bad clock management from Georgia there, and I think it cost them a chance to get 7 points.
Yeah, it feels like it was almost in direct contrast to the aggressiveness that we saw from Coach Smart and this Georgia team last week when they wanted to go ahead and get that onside kick, steal an extra possession, and really bury Texas. It felt like the way that they handled that drive at the end of the first half was, in pretty much direct contrast to what we saw from them last week. And I was really, in agreement with the caller. I really thought that we were going to try and take that opportunity to try and get 7. It was 10-3 at that point in time, and I believe Jesse Palmer had mentioned on the broadcast, you score a touchdown there, and then you come out and score a touchdown to start the second half, it would have been 24-3, and really you would be putting Tech in a bad position to come out and start that second half. But that isn't what happened. We ended up getting a little bit more passive in the end of that drive, and up to that point in the first half, the offense had still been moving the ball really well. Even earlier in that drive, had basically had their way running the ball and putting themselves in a position to kick that field goal. And so when Coach Smart didn't take a timeout, I believe he could have taken his first timeout with about 48 seconds left, and we were already in field goal range inside the 30-yard line. That would have been a great opportunity to take some shots at the end zone, or maybe see if you can get some quick, out routes to the sideline, work your way up the field, and potentially put yourself in a position to take some shorter shots at the end zone before you end up kicking the field goal. So it felt like we just kind of took our foot off the gas there, and that really could have been an opportunity to really start to bury Tech, and maybe that momentum would have carried over into the second half had that first half drive ended a little bit differently.
More phone calls coming, 678-645-DAWG, D-A-W-G, 678-645-DAWG, or click the link on any of our chats, Facebook, YouTube, DawgNation.com, and you can join the show here tonight. A couple more minutes with Rodrigo Blankenship as well, and then plenty more of your phone calls coming up after that. Bill's in Rome. Bill, you're next up tonight on our DawgNation postgame call-in show. Bill, how about them Dogs? You're with us every week. What did you think about Georgia tonight? A little bit more of a sweat job than we wanted it to be, but Georgia got the win nonetheless.
Yeah, nonetheless, it's right. I mean, this was more of a defensive struggle. But you know what, B.A.? That's okay. I'll take the W any which way. Now, this is a good thing we got the win, so we secure ourselves in the playoffs automatically. Now, what happens with the other games? If we're still going to be in the SEC championship game, I hope not. I'd rather just skip the SEC championship and just move on to the playoffs. That's how I feel. Give the ones that are injured plenty of rest to get ready for the playoffs. That's all I'm saying. Thanks, B.A. Talk with you Monday.
Appreciate it, Bill. Great stuff. And so, Rodrigo, before we let you go, let me bounce through a couple of the points that Bill brought up, and I'll start with that. You know, as we're doing our post-game show, obviously Texas A&M going to get ready to get going here if it's not already started. I'm not sure what time it is. Getting close to that. A Texas upset or an Auburn upset tomorrow puts Georgia in the SEC championship. Let me begin with that point. What do you think is better for Georgia? Is it to hold out for what probably will be a home playoff game without playing in the SEC championship, or is it playing in the SEC championship with the thought that you can be a top 4 seed and get a chance to skip past the first round? It's a different type of decision that would have been made when you made the college football playoff in your Georgia career, and Georgia really doesn't have much control of it. It's, for the most part, outside their hands. But what do you think, if anything, is better for Georgia here?
I think that the ideal situation for Georgia is to not play in the SEC championship game, but get bumped out of the top 4 and play in the first round of the playoffs. I think that we saw last year where every team that had a bye in the college football playoff last year lost, and all teams that had byes last year were losing at halftime. Every team got off to a slow start, including Georgia against Notre Dame. The only team that ever was leading at any point in any of those games in the quarterfinals last year, I believe, was Arizona State against Texas. Every other team was losing basically from start to finish. And so I think that you want to play in that first round so you shake the rust off a week sooner. Obviously, this Georgia team is in need of some time off so that they can get some injured players back. We had Ernest Green, who was in and out of the lineup today. He's dealing with injury. Mike Bobo with his hand laceration. He could really use the time off. Chauncey Bowens, I know, was probable for this game, but we didn't see him at all today as far as I could tell. So, you know, he could really use that time off. So I would like to see Georgia get to start their break period now and not be playing in the SEC championship. But I don't know that it's going to be ideal for Georgia to have a bye, because then they would have the most downtime of any team in the college football playoff. Because we're playing on Black Friday, almost everybody else is playing tomorrow. So you would have the longest break of pretty much any team in the college football playoff, including ourselves and Ole Miss, who will probably also be there. If they were to have a bye for some reason. But I think that the ideal situation is Georgia not playing in the SEC championships. You get to start your break. You don't have to worry about getting banged up and potentially have other players go down with injuries, as we saw last year, and then get to play in that first round game. So you knock the rust off and you get that first round game at home, assuming you're that 5 to 8 seed. So that's really what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for an emphatic performance from Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship, where they look so impressive that the committee will potentially pop them into the top 4, and then Georgia will end up in that 5 to 6 spot and get that first round game at home.
That's a very interesting way to look at that. Let me get a couple more issues with you here. One of the things our last caller also brings up is the injury situation. I'll be honest, I was holding out hope that Chauncey Bowens would play today. He didn't. We talked about C.J. Allen today on DawgNation Daily about what might have been a little bit of a hint from Georgia that Allen was ready to play. Lo and behold, he was playing today. Made at least one play that I recognized. I don't know that it was the very best of C.J. Allen. He's probably still working his way back from injury. And I think, depending on the severity, this Drew Bobo injury could turn out to be very serious. That's a concern, because the Georgia offense, as you and I both have said, was just not the same without him in there. So one way or another, whether it's playing next Saturday, which Georgia very well might do, or anything else, either way, you're talking about a situation in which Georgia's got some injuries, Bowens, Bobo, etc. where you're going to have to be very much paying attention to what's going on there, because these have the potential to be pretty serious for Georgia.
Yes, they could. Obviously, we're hoping for the best for Drew Bobo. Coming back out in the boot, not a great sign. You don't really love to see that, but we're going to hope for the best. I'm sure that he's going to have some imaging done to determine the exact extent of that injury. Hopefully, he will be available, whether that be next week. Probably unlikely at this point, considering he's in a boot right now. So if Georgia were to find themselves in the SEC championship, I imagine he would be unavailable for that. But I do think there's a good chance that he could be available for a college football playoff run if we're going to have the next 3 or 4 or 5 weeks off, whatever the case may be, wherever Georgia ends up being seated. That time off could allow him the possibility to come back for the playoffs. I think that something that was, that we noticed a few years ago when Florida State lost Jordan Travis to his injury is the committee, cited the criteria in their evaluation saying that we take into consideration the availability of key players and coaches when we are evaluating teams to be seated in the college football playoffs. And if a certain team in the SEC, like Ole Miss, was to be without their head coach going into the college football playoffs, that could affect their ranking. I don't think that the committee would evaluate the absence of Drew Bobo as being as significant, of a blow to this team as the likes of Jordan Travis for Florida State a few years ago. But it is something to keep in the back of your mind that the committee is going to be looking at that. Obviously, a lot of our other playmakers are skill players. Gunner Stockton being available, C.J. Allen being one of our best players on defense being available. That will all allow this team to still be mostly healthy for whatever lies next for them.
And then I'll give one more issue to you, then we'll let you go enjoy your day after Thanksgiving with your family there, Rodrigo. But maybe the issue as it relates to our conversation here is, I'll be honest, I was coming into this afternoon's game perhaps a little bit greedy. I'd seen Georgia play better against Texas, play better against Mississippi State, building momentum. I was really of the belief that, man, if Georgia could look the part of a national championship level team tonight against Georgia Tech, then that might be a signal they were ready to run through the playoff and really give themselves that chance. Obviously, I'm not here to say they won't still do that, but I think tonight I tried to set a very high standard for what I hoped I might see from Georgia as a way to let everybody know they're ready to go into the playoff with the same momentum it appeared they played with during a lot of November. And it could be that was just a standard tonight for whatever reason that Georgia was just not able to aspire to, and ultimately how they play in the bigger games that are still yet to come, that's going to determine the success of this season. But I came in here today really licking my chops of Georgia's going to play with a ton of momentum. Georgia's going to keep it going. Georgia may throttle Tech and then just roll right into the college football playoff. Well, listen, they may still roll right into the college football playoff, but looking like that team today, we didn't quite get our wish. It could be, Rodrigo, that I just had I was a little too greedy for what I hoped I might see from Georgia here in today's game, given what the previous 11 games have been.
Yeah, I think that coming into this game, I had two different kinds of expectations. One as a former player and one as an analyst sitting in this seat talking to you every week. And the analyst in me, is of the same thinking that you are, that I was really thinking that this could be a game where Georgia could come out and dominate start to finish, wire to wire, and impose their will. And in the first half, we saw signs of that potentially being able to happen, where Georgia just had their way and was able to run the ball pretty much willy-nilly in the first half. And so from the analyst side of me, I really wanted to see that for Georgia. But as a former player, knowing the intensity of this rivalry, I was just going to be happy with Georgia walking out of Mercedes-Benz Stadium with a win today. And I think when you look at last year's team, I think that last year, Georgia playing at home, you would think that home being in Sanford Stadium would give them a significant advantage playing against Georgia Tech, playing against a Georgia Tech team that is not as talented as this year's team, having to go to 8 overtimes in order to get a win. Georgia was able to win in regulation on a neutral site today. And so, that was something that was, really encouraging for me, and just a sign that this team, I think, is better than last year's team, being able to win away from home. Don't have to go to overtime to beat a higher quality Georgia Tech team than you did last year, I think, speaks to the progress of this Georgia team, and especially being able to win when your offense isn't performing at the level that we have come to expect the last few weeks. I don't think it could really get much worse for the Georgia offense than what we saw today. And so if Georgia is able to beat an improved Georgia Tech team compared to last year when not bringing their best on offense, I do think that is, a little bit encouraging, because surely the offense is going to play better the next time they step out on a field. And if the defense can continue to play at the level that they have coming into this week, giving up only 13.5 points per game over the last 4 games, games, and then again only giving up 9 points tonight, not allowing a single touchdown. If the defense can continue to play at this level that they have for the last 5 games now, and the offense just gets back to a normal level of efficiency and production going into the playoffs, I think this team is going to be just fine. So the expectations were, pulling me in either direction based on the side of me, the analyst side or the former player side. There were, very 2 different expectations for this game. So I'm going to be happy with this win, and I expect, a renewed efficiency from the Georgia offense the next time they step out on the field.
Rodrigo, great stuff. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Hope you and your family are getting ready to enjoy a wonderful Christmas time of year and everything else that goes on here, and plenty more good Georgia football games in the midst of all of that, too. We appreciate that. We'll look forward to talking to you very soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on again tonight. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Great stuff from Rodrigo Blankenship. We're going to keep the conversation going with you. Going to run through as many phone calls as we can. So ring us up here, 678-645-DAWG. Dawg spelled D-A-W-G. That's 678-645-DAWG. And if you're watching on any of our chats right now, click the link, join us via Zoom. We are about to run through a bunch of phone calls, I promise you that. Also, let me remind you that, of course, we're hopeful maybe to be back at the UGA bookstore at some point in time here before 2025 comes to an end. And as you're getting ready for your own Christmas season and those hard-to-buy-for folks on your shopping list, the UGA bookstore is a great resource for you. You like good-looking UGA apparel? Of course you do. I'm talking about Peter Millar or Stuart Simmons or All Reserve or Johnny O. The best-looking UGA stuff, it's all right there at the UGA bookstore. If you can't get to Athens, you can shop online, UGAbookstore.com. But I'm telling you right now, it's a fun trip to take. Just go over to Athens. You can take your picture in the West End Zone. It's open. You have a chance to see that. Beautiful view of the stadium, and a great way to shop all the aisles there at the UGA bookstore and see some of the best-looking UGA gear you're ever going to get. We appreciate the UGA bookstore being a part of what we do here on the DawgNation Postgame Call-In Show each and every Saturday. Appreciate you as well. Before we get back to your phone calls, let's also hear from Kirby Smart a moment ago, sharing his first thoughts about this win against Georgia Tech. This is what Kirby had to say.
Just awesome atmosphere. Enjoy getting to play, obviously, in this venue anytime we get to be here. Incredible atmosphere. A lot of credit to both teams. Played hard, man. That was a physical, tough game, and our guys were very resilient during it and found ways. Thought the defense really stepped up today. Schumann and the staff did an incredible job putting plans together, and we did what we had to do offensively, and got to continue to get better. But really proud of this team. 50th win, I think somebody said, for the seniors. 8th win in a row over Georgia Tech. So those are things that we can hang a hat on. It's Brent's done a great job with this program. They have physical toughness. They play extremely hard. Their guys play at a great pad level and hard to beat. And we controlled the game in terms of time of possession, but didn't dominate the game. But very proud of what this group did.
I think that's exactly right. Everything that Kirby Smart said there. This was a great day for the Georgia defense, and there are some milestones here. A 50th win for the seniors, an 8th straight win against Georgia Tech. That sets a program mark, and boy, you've got the Georgia defense to thank a lot for that. I think that's really well said by Kirby Smart. We'll hear from Jeff Sentell here coming up in a couple of moments, but want to hear from you right now, too. Derek's in Tennessee. You're next up on our DawgNation postgame call-in show. Derek, how about them Dogs? You just heard from Kirby Smart. Your own thoughts now. What'd you think about 16-9? Georgia beats Georgia Tech here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Well, BA, I don't like playing on Fridays, I think. So, but, I'll take a dub anytime. Defense continues to get better. But tonight, we just seemed out of sync on offense. And I don't know if it's, playing on Fridays. I don't know. Last year, we looked out of sync in the first half, and then we come back. But I don't like playing these Friday games. But I do want to voice that, man, I love the SEC championship game. And I know we've got injuries, and so I'm hoping we get in that game. I'm hoping we win it because that's special. And I just want to say go Dogs, and hopefully we can get the offense churning again.
Derek, I love the phone call. I really appreciate that. I'm like you. my preference, and I think it's more than sentimentality, although I do have a lot of affection for the SEC championship. Historically, that's been my favorite sporting event, but I do believe it's more than just that makes me want and hope that one of these results occurs that allows Georgia to play in that SEC championship. Let me try to explain it this way, and y'all can tell me that you disagree, but this is my thought. But the thing, if Georgia does not win the national championship, what's going to prevent it from doing so is not its path. Oh, you should have. The thing about Georgia is it's got to play like a national champion. And I just said this to Rodrigo, that maybe part of the issue here today is I just came into this game a little bit greedy, thinking this is going to be the game after a little bit of improvement here and a lot of improvement there and pretty good on offense, getting better on defense. This is going to be the game that Georgia puts it all together. And obviously today, while we're still very happy about this win for all the reasons that Kirby mentioned, ultimately Georgia did not completely put it all together today. I view the SEC championship as another opportunity to do that. It's not the extra game that could fatigue and prevent you from winning the title. It's the game where you can find something about yourself that gives you a chance to get on the roll and maintain the momentum it seemed like Georgia was building after the Texas game. So I say I still welcome the SEC championship game appearance, but I do know and I have respect for the fact that many of you do not feel the same way, Rodrigo Blankenship included. He was pretty articulate in explaining that a moment ago, but I'm more in Derek's camp when it comes to that. We'll keep the phone calls going. Our guy Ryan Walker, always great to join us, checking in from Philly. He's also a big Falcons fan. Ryan, I hate to say this, but I think the Falcons came into the Dawgs came in to Mercedes-Benz Stadium today and looked a little bit about like that Falcons offense at times. Unfortunately, you always have great things to say. What did you think about what goes down for Georgia here today?
First off, I got to say go Dogs. You see, I had to break out the old school Kirby Smart jersey just because it's hate week this week. So bringing that out. But no, you're right. With the Falcons, they still got to figure it out. Still got a lot of issues. The best part about that is Jalen Walker is in the runnings for defensive rookie of the year. So the Dogs still got something going over here. So I'm good with it. And Charlie Warner did his thing last Sunday. But getting to these Dogs, look, this is the first time we can say that this offense has literally not really showed up. But that's okay because the defense was trying to figure it out while the offense was carrying. It happens. You know, unfortunately, Gunner Stockton could not hit pretty much couldn't hit the open ocean with a beach ball today. But guess what? Those wide receivers wasn't catching anything either. They weren't getting separation. Tech had a great game plan. We ended up figuring out, okay, run the ball. Nate Frazier had a great game. Chauncey Bowens, like you said, a little banged up. Hopefully we get him back. But then you got to look at, we had the big man rolling today, Josh McCray, who did some things. But the best part about today, you saw the emergence of Gabe Harris today. You saw Quinyon Johnson today doing his thing. And then you saw Ellis Robinson grow up in front of you today. Another interception going deep, which was very reminiscent of Malachi Starks in that Oregon game. Really looked identical, if you want to be honest. But if you look at it, the defense has grown up. They're still making little mistakes here and there, but I can live with that. Today was not a day that it was a pretty win, but I'll take an ugly win all day over a pretty loss where you fight your ass or you fight your behind off and then you end up in the loser column. I'm good. We're 11-1. We're sitting pretty right now, and we're just waiting. We're just waiting our turn. If we get to the SEC championship game, hey, it is what it is. Cool. If we don't get to the SEC championship game, hey, look at it like this. We have people that need to get healthy so we can make this run. That's what I'm looking at. And we have a chance. You have all this time off to prep, to get guys ready, to get guys healthy, and you have a chance to make a run. And if you're in the 4th or 5th bracket, that's pretty much, I wouldn't say easy, but I'll say it's more of a smooth sailing bracket because if you get Tulane, you get Texas Tech, or you get North Texas in your first game, that right there would not be a bad way to start off the playoffs to get your guys back in rhythm. So if we don't get to the SEC championship game and you get one of these G5s to start off with, guess what? You get to knock off the rust before you get to the real competition. So right now we're sitting pretty. We have a chance to go to the playoffs and do something. Our defense is peaking at the right time. We got to get the offense back on track. The running game is there, but we got to get that passing game together. And the other thing that we didn't do today, minus the interception that Gunner threw, and he was going to Lucky today, we didn't incorporate the tight ends today. If no one said that already, or if someone said it, I apologize for stepping on that. But we've got to incorporate the tight ends more in this offense coming up in the playoffs, because we have 4 weapons, period. We have 4 weapons that we could use at tight end with Riddell, Lucky, Delp, and also the freshman Williams. So at this point, let's get healthy. Let's see what happens. Let the chips fall where they may. Go Dogs and rise up. We're in a beautiful place right now. Thanks, BA.
I love it, Ryan. Great phone call. Yeah, great stuff, Ryan. Appreciate the phone call, and I'm glad you're calling out some of those individual names on defense on a day in which we're really celebrating the defense for, frankly, saving Georgia from what otherwise very likely would not have been a UGA win. I think you're saying the right names. First of all, Ellis Robinson, back-to-back games now with an interception. I think it's quite possible that the Robinson moment has really arrived, and now he's ready to be the kind of dynamic playmaker at the cornerback position that Georgia hasn't always had. The guy that makes plays on the ball in the air. That seems to be something that Ellis Robinson is able to do right now. A big performance from him. And listen, getting a turnover right there, Georgia still has not been a turnover machine on defense this year. In that situation, being able to get that turnover was a very big deal. Being able to do that is a very big deal. And Robinson was huge there on that. Also, Gabe Harris, Quintavious Johnson. I thought that Johnson had a very good game today. Frankly, a lot of the place fake stuff that is something that Haynes King had always been really good at. We didn't see Georgia bite on as much of that. I give Quintavious Johnson a lot of that credit. Saw Raylan Wilson make a couple of plays. It was nice just to have C.J. Allen out there. The point, as Jeff Sentell joins us, the point is that thank goodness for the Georgia defense. Boy, there have been a lot of games this year when the Georgia offense probably bailed that group out because they were having a hard time getting off the field. But man, oh man, against the number 5 offense in America from a yards per game standpoint, they were as good as they've been at any point in time this season. Picked a crucial time to be at their best.
Brandon, first of all, I think you said something really well that resonated with me just a second ago when I mean that, a football season is partly where sometimes the offense doesn't have it, sometimes the defense doesn't have it, and Georgia's offense has bailed a lot of water out of some maybe sinking ships that would have been Georgia's outcomes in a lot of games. And so this is kind of like the natural of order thing. Sometimes it's going to go yin-yang. It's going to go back the other way. I think one thing that comes to my mind as I walk up and join you, Brandon, is like, I don't believe in it, but there's something about this stadium, looking at that camera and looking up at those bleachers, that makes me think Georgia just didn't play their best football, anywhere near their best football game tonight. And, one of the big things that's going to come out of everything from Georgia tonight in the post-game locker room is they want to play in the SEC championship game, Brandon. There was a part, this is a funny story, there was a part in the post-game scrum, it was one of those where all the young men were at the table and they all got called upon independently. And somebody asked a question for the group. They says, how do you feel about when you guys will get to play? Is it a little awkward? What do you feel about getting the chance to play? And then there was a silence for a little bit, Brandon. The people was like, oh no, what am I going to say here? What am I going to say here? I don't know if the talking point had been rehearsed with those. And Gunner says, when it comes time for us to play, we'll be ready. It's one of those moments where, he self-scouted himself, Brandon. He said didn't play well, but the main thing is the Dogs won today, and that's what's the most important thing. I thought, among a lot of things, I'm glad you hit the note on Ellis Robinson. He's coming along. I thought, to a man, the question came up again, Brandon, and this gets very interesting to me, Brandon, because everybody wants to win the SEC championship. I'm an OG fan. You're an OG fan of SEC football. That trophy means something, and Kirby Smart reiterated that in the postgame presser. He's like, guys, I don't know what it is, but this is still a really big deal to win the SEC championship. I do feel that way. But now, Brandon, you have, and I'd love to get your thoughts immediately on this, Drew Bobo does not look like he's going to be available to play in that game next week. He was in a walking boot. Georgia's offense was demonstrably different with him out there. And then all of a sudden, it's like, do you want to go to the SEC championship and win the greatest conference in the land? Or do you want to get your team ready with the bye week? Because it looks like Drew Bobo really needs it right now.
So the Bobo injury, we've said this already a few times. We'll get back to the phones. I promise. We're going to run through a bunch of phone calls right after this. So if you're on hold, stay where you are. the Bobo injury is a significant one, and we'll hear Kirby Smart on this topic in a moment. The Bobo injury is a significant one. I think you got to be concerned about that. And yet, at the same time, for me, wanting to play in the SEC championship, if the goal is a national championship, wanting to play in the SEC championship goes beyond just the sentimentality of, isn't the SEC championship a special thing that we've always loved for our entire lives? Look, let's not overthink this. It's better to be the higher seed than it is to be a lower seed. Even if the 5 seed gets a chance to play at home against a group of 5 team, you're still talking about a situation where, you know, your next game would be against a Texas Tech, and then the game, which is not an easy game. And then you're also on the same side of the bracket at that point with the presumed number 1 seed in Ohio State, assuming it keeps winning out. I'm not telling you that Georgia can't beat Ohio State, but I do think that if there was one team you'd like to avoid a little later, Ohio State would probably be it. Whereas if you play in the SEC championship, not only do you have a really good chance of getting one of those top 4 seeds, obviously by winning or even just by playing in the game, you also have a chance to get like a 2nd or a 3rd seed, which I do think from a bracket standpoint is a far more advantageous position. Kirby Smart, though, did talk about Georgia in the SEC championship, and he's made very clear what he said for a while, that is still the goal for this program, to be playing in this building again next Saturday. This is what Kirby Smart said.
If you worry about injury risk, we won't practice next week. So, like, you live your life scared of injuries, you know what you get? A very scared team. And there's also an opportunity to win an SEC championship. Does that matter? Does anybody care about that anymore? I mean, I grew up thinking that was the greatest game in the world, and I just differed from everybody else. Yeah, we lost guys today to injury. We're going to lose guys in practice to injury, but that's next man up. Like, that's what's wrong with this whole thing now. It's like, well, what if you get hurt? What if you do this? What if you do that? I mean, it's football. It's all part of it.
Strong words there from Kirby Smart. Back to the phones we go. Brandon's in Covington. Brandon, you're next up on our DawgNation postgame call-in show. How about them Dogs? Big day for the Georgia defense, and Georgia's now won 8 straight against the Yellow Jackets. What do you think about it?
I think it was a good game defensively. I think the guys on the defensive side have really stepped up. They've really grown and meshed together. I think our linebacker core, they've really come to find their own. They're always calling on each other. You can watch every play that they go through. They're always going through their progressions. I love it. I think Ellis Robinson has stepped into his own. I love seeing him grow up the way he has. Offensively, it wasn't a good game. I go back to the phone call you had a couple of phone calls ago. 2 things. One, I would love to play in the SEC championship game. Same way that he just said. I've, grown up my entire life, that was the biggest game, in a conference was the SEC championship game. And here's my point, too. If we do, let's say if Texas A&M loses and we play Bama, it would do my heart so good to beat Bama and knock them out of the playoffs altogether. That would be the best Christmas wish I could ever hope for, is for us to, one, win an SEC title, but to knock Alabama out of the playoffs completely. Would love it. 2, if that doesn't happen, I would like to see us go, and I know I'm going to sound crazy for saying this, but I would love to see, even if we did drop to, like, say 5 where Texas Tech is, I think that would be the best scenario. Going back to Rodrigo, what he was saying, I think waiting until, having that bye, not playing in the SEC championship game, you're waiting almost a month to play. I think, us missing, if we do end up missing the SEC championship game, it'll give us enough time on a bye to get healthy. Guys like C.J. Allen, Drew Bobo, get his, whatever better ankle, leg. It'll give time for guys that are banged up, time to heal, and then for us to go have a tune-up game. I'm not looking past, whoever that 12 seed is, but it would be good to have a tune-up game. Gunner would find his confidence back in a playoff game. It would get everybody ready to go for the next slot. But all around, today I think every Georgia fan can say they weren't impressed with, offensive side. But at the end of the day, Georgia Tech could be 1-11 or 0-10. That's their national championship game, is when they play the Dogs. They always play us hard. I think Brent Key has done a lot of things over there in that program to switch some things up. And, they're always going to play us hard. I think they've been preparing all year, all off spring, for Georgia. So they played us 10 times harder. I think this was a good wake-up call for our offense. It was a good, game for our defense. But all in all, man, I really think, Brandon, that we're going to go, whether we play in the SEC championship game or not, I think them Dogs are going to be ready, man. And at the end of the day, I'm always hollering, go Dogs.
Brandon, I love it. Hollering go Dogs indeed. That's great stuff, and a lot of really good insight there on that. And one of the things that comes up in that phone call is, hey, the injury to Drew Bobo. And I put a lot of the offensive struggles for Georgia today on the absence of Bobo. A center is just crucial in recognition and comfort for the quarterback. And I don't want to say that Gunner struggles today, and he did struggle. I don't want to say that was all related to the Bobo injury, but boy, I put a lot of that on that, Jeff.
One of the things that we talked about with that point we made a minute ago, and I mean, what did the Charlotte coach last week say? Obviously about Drew Bobo, right? The guy that didn't play last week. He thought it was one of the best centers he's ever seen, and Brandon, with a lot of offenses, the center's responsible for a lot. Just look how well Georgia's run game has operated this year with Drew Bobo at center compared to last year with Jared Wilson, who is a starter in the NFL right now, man. There's a difference. I think there's a tangible difference. And, that's one thing that Kirby Smart said, Brandon. One of the points we were making is like SEC championship or get healthy. Kirby made no bones about it. He's like, it's a next man up league. It's a next man up. We want to get these guys ready. We want to play in this game. And that's what football is. He said, people were asking him, he's like, hey man, we could get hurt in practice this week. We could get hurt playing Tech. And I mean, so you have a lot of folks sitting there wondering, what's the best thing for Georgia? Is it the end game? Is it the SEC? What you do have here is you have a football team that, just really feeds off moments like this.
Since we're talking about Tolliver coming in place of Drew Bobo, Kirby did also talk about that a moment ago, too. This is what Kirby had to say.
Not sure. He's got an ankle, foot, not sure.
How much did losing him affect what had been a very productive first half running football?
Don't know. Have to reserve that for the tape and watch. Thank goodness, Malachi got the time he got week before to go in there and play. There was one run that we thought would have got out, been an explosive, that he didn't quite get the guy, but I don't honestly know until I watch that tape.
Yeah, so obviously a big situation for Georgia if it is Tolliver in an SEC championship. While you don't, as the previous caller said, that doesn't scare you away from playing the game necessarily. It certainly would not be Georgia's its absolute best if Drew Bobo's not in there at the center position. Michael's in Kentucky. You're next up on our DawgNation postgame call-in show. Michael, how about them Dogs? Georgia gets a win. We're talking about it with you. Glad to have you here as we're on the field at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Hey, thanks a lot. Absolutely good, Dogs. I love everybody. With that said, though, I want to hit you with a few stats. I love Mike Bobo as a player. He played when I was in law school, but here I go anyway. All this injury stuff, I mean, yeah, injuries are real, but, in the last 5 years, we have 105 4- and 5-star recruits. They have 15. You know what I mean? We should be able to handle an injury or two. As far as the offense and the output, the only team that scored less points than us against Tech was Gardner-Webb. I mean, come on. We got to do better than that. And the thing is, if you're a fan of Georgia, you've seen this before. You've seen this exact kind of offense before. 2007 to 2014, the last time Coach Bobo was the offensive coordinator. I mean, here you go. Coach Richt, without Bobo, 2 SEC titles. With him, 0. Coach Kirby, without Bobo, 2 national titles. With 0. And it's always the same. We take our foot off the gas. We disappear in big games. I mean, like I said, I love the guy. I think he's awesome. He's a damn good dog, everything. But as an offensive coordinator, he's above average. And, either you're elite or you're not. And it seems to me that if we're going to hold our players to a certain standard, we got to hold our assistant coaches to the same standard.
I appreciate the phone call. I think you may have dropped out at the end there. I appreciate the phone call. So my overall feeling on that is that tonight the Georgia offense did not have a good game. Now, I think where you and I might be a little bit different, I'm thankful for your phone call. I'm thankful to get the opinion that you provided. I think where you and I might be just a little bit different, though, is I think that Georgia's had an outstanding season offensively, and I do give a lot of credit to that to Mike Bobo. But tonight is not a very good night to try to say that and make the case for that, because tonight was a very bad game for Georgia offensively. And as Rodrigo Blankenship himself said when he joined us here a little earlier, I do think you put some of that on the offensive game planning, which obviously points back to coaches. Jeff, the only way I can explain this is it just seemed like Georgia overthought this a little bit today. They knew, based on what they'd seen from Tech all season, certainly what they'd seen from Tech against Pitt, they would have success with the running game, and they did. And yet it's almost like they became really this is just my best description. It's almost like they became really timid with the notion of throwing it because they didn't want to squander what was a running game they felt like would work. But when it's all said and done, it's almost as if they did squander the running game. You had Nate Frazier going for over 100 yards. That's a pretty rare feat in this Georgia offense that gives so many guys touches. A 100-yard game from Nate Frazier, but this was arguably the worst offensive game of the Kirby Smart era. I'd be hard-pressed to figure out one that was worse. Gunner Stockton did not complete a pass more than 3 yards down the field. He was 0 for 9 on passes of more than 3 yards down the field. I have no problem with the Georgia fans saying that the Georgia coaches, whether you want to call it Mike Bobo or whatever, needed a better offensive game plan than this. I got no problem on this particular night saying it. I think it's been a good season for Georgia offensively, and I do credit the coaching staff for that. But tonight was a wretched performance offensively.
Right, and it gets even worse. I think they had something like 40 yards passing on the night. 31 of those came on those two passes behind the line to Zachariah Branch, where Zachariah Branch goes matrix a little bit and makes a guy miss, where he's basically moving and cutting in one direction while he's stopping. And I feel like what you're trying to say there, Brandon, is it looked like, okay, let's get cute. Let's throw it around a little bit. And then they're like, no, we should just run the ball. And then when they were running the ball and they were establishing themselves, it looked like the Dogs were like, all right, now let's go back to the pass. Yeah. And they left that alone.
Here's the thing. You can't, even if you're running it successfully, you can't run it on every down because they're just going to send more and more bodies to the line of scrimmage. And to a certain extent, that's probably what Tech was doing. You had to have something in the pass game. Rodrigo Blankenship earlier said that he thought that Gunner's confidence got shaken after the interception. We spoke about Gunner and confidence near the beginning of the year. That's as good an explanation as anything. But when it came time to leave the running game behind and find some effective passing plays, they just didn't have it. It didn't look like it had a chance to succeed when the ball was snapped a few times tonight. So if you've been a critic of the Georgia offense, I'm not surprised that you're back speaking about that again, because tonight is a night, I don't mind saying this, tonight's a night where there's plenty of fodder for that, even if I would have a different opinion about the season overall.
I'm kind of torn, Brandon. When I was walking up to your tripod and getting ready to join you, I tried to go on both sides of this right now. Number one, the passing offense that climbed Georgia back into the game against Tennessee, non-existent. Couldn't see it. And this was a team that, let's be honest, Georgia Tech had gotten shredded through the air. The last 5 football games they played, opponents had a 70% completion percentage, Brandon. That's also while running for like 200 yards per game. They were throwing it at will. Boston College had its way, a 1-10 Boston College team. And I try to marriage with that thought right there with the totality of the season, Brandon. And I don't know if you've said this already, but sometimes you have to dabble in this sort of perspective. The Georgia Tech game, for what it was tonight, was still easier than last year's game at home. Georgia is somehow 11-1 this year, Brandon. And I don't know how you feel, but I sit there and go, there's egg on their face for this one. They didn't play well, and when you win, when you don't play well, I think sometimes that's a mark of a good team. But then also, you sit there and you go, this is an 11-1 football team after what they went through, and I don't think anybody can chirp about that.
Yeah, 11-1 is quite an accomplishment. I do agree with Jeff on that. Let's get Stephen in Albany. Stephen, you're next up on our DawgNation Postgame call-in show. Stephen, how about them Dogs? 8 straight against Tech, 11 wins on the season so far, with, we believe, still more on the way and almost a certain trip to the college football playoff coming up. What's your overall thoughts about the good, the bad, and everything in between from tonight's game?
Go Dogs. So everything about this
Go
game,
Dogs.
First, I want to give a shout out to the defense. We've been seeing for the last few weeks that we're starting to ascend on that side of the ball, especially Ellis Robinson. He's arrived. DeMello Jones, he's ascending. Gabe Harris, he's arrived. Q Johnson, he's arrived. Elijah Griffin, he's arrived. So our young guys are stepping up on the defensive side of the ball, and it just had to take time. Now on the offense, I'm just going to say this. It's time to step up from the quarterback position. Gunner Stockton has been showing some good skills when it comes to being on the tape. When it came to Ole Miss, Tennessee, even Alabama to an extent. But the last pretty much couple of weeks to Charlotte, and even when it came to Georgia Tech, he has made some egregious throws. That interception that he threw to the linebacker, the thing about it was it wasn't an anticipatory, like interception, meaning he just, misread it. He literally looked at the linebacker, and the linebacker was looking at him, meaning like it looked like the linebacker ran the route as Lucky did. And also, he is not trusting his eyes, and also when it comes to his progression. One of the things as a quarterback, you do your most damage before the ball is hiked. You have to know your progressions, read the defense, and know based upon the defense what they're giving you, knowing where your progressions need to go, 1, 2, 3, or how many every wide receiver you have on the field. There's a couple throws that he could have made if he just trusted his progression. There was a play to where Noah Thomas ran an in-breaking route. He was clearing behind the linebacker. He missed him. On the hands to the face call to Cash Jones, he had Dylan Bell running down the sidelines to the right, wide open in the end zone. Those are things that we're going to have to clean up, and he's going to have to take the next level. We have to have a quarterback that can show a consistent command of the offense. As you look at Ohio State, Julian Sayin, even though he's a freshman, you can tell he has a command of the offense. He plays within the offense, and he makes the right decision. We need Gunner Stockton to step up and make the right decisions so that we can start to actually put together complementary football for 4 quarters, and as the competition will increase, we also will meet them with our best full team effort as we get to the playoffs and hopefully to the SEC championship.
Hey, good phone call. I appreciate it. And I'm going to say a little bit about Gunner. It's so much like I said about Mike Bobo a moment ago. I think for the full season, Gunner's actually had a remarkable year, but he had not sugarcoated. He had a terrible game tonight. He was really, he gave Georgia 40-plus rushing yards. That's not nothing. But unfortunately, through the air, Gunner Stockton was just it was just not really a factor in tonight's game at all. As I said earlier, I believe I have this stat right, no completions on a ball thrown more than 3 yards down the field. But overall, you mentioned Julian Sayin. For the full season, I don't know that Julian Sayin's had a better year than Gunner Stockton has, especially when you measure Stockton's performance against ranked teams, late in games against ranked teams. Stockton's done a lot. He didn't do any of it tonight. So a little bit like the previous criticism of Mike Bobo. If you're critical of Gunner tonight on the basis of this game, unfortunately the results speak for themselves. We can put some of those numbers on the screen for you. The results speak for themselves. This was just not a night that Gunner was very good. You mentioned the interception. To me, and I mentioned this with Rodrigo earlier, that wasn't so much a bad decision. It was just an errant throw. I think that Lucky was open in a relatively tight window. I just think that Gunner missed the throw. He was just off target on that. But more important is what Kirby Smart thinks about that. This is Kirby on Gunner from a few moments ago.
I want to see the tape and see. Obviously it wasn't great. There was some drop 8 in there. There was some pressure he took on, a couple batted balls. He's got to do what he's coached to do. And that's the toughest thing is Mike and Streeter, got to put him in great situations. There's a couple plays that we think were out there that we didn't make, and he'll watch the tape. He'll grow from it and get better, and so will the rest of the team.
Interesting analysis from Kirby Smart, speaking to perhaps what Rodrigo Blankenship brought up a little earlier, that maybe that Gunner started doubting himself a bit after he threw that interception. A lot of folks want to talk about this. We're going to give you a chance to do so. We're also going to invite you to do it with us. So please give us a call, 678-645-DAWG. That's DAWG, 678-645-DAWG. Click the link. Join us via the chat there. We'll put you up on Zoom. You can talk Georgia football this tonight. Georgia gets a 16-9 win against Georgia Tech, 8 straight against the Yellow Jackets, an 11th win in the regular season with an almost certain trip coming for the college football playoff. But it was not perfect, and certainly we're walking through all the reasons why it wasn't. So a lot of folks are on hold. If you are on hold, please stay there. We're going to get through a lot of phone calls coming up. Jeff's going to react to what he saw. We'll let you do the same thing. Give me 60 seconds, though, 1 minute to thank a couple of sponsors, and then we're right back at all the phone calls in rapid-fire succession. 60 seconds from right now. Good to have you with us tonight on the DawgNation Postgame Call-In Show.
I get it. We all want to do our research online before buying anything. But if you're in the market for a hot tub, trust me, you'll be glad you came into Georgia Spa Company to see their inventory in person. You just got to get your hands on them, see them, envision which model will fit your home and your lifestyle best. Talk to one of our consultants who, I promise you, will bring up considerations you never thought to consider. I'd also recommend taking a test soak. So come on into Georgia Spa Company. I promise you'll be glad you did.
Big games deserve big meals, so let ServPro make it happen. It's friendly Tex-Mex, served fresh every day. Serchero's Catering can handle the crowd, so it's perfect for your tailgate or watch party. Order online, pickup, or delivery. Serchero's is Georgia grown with over 30 locations throughout the state, bringing you fresh Mex, bowls, burritos, tacos, and more, with over 25 fresh toppings, customizable just the way you like it. So find a location near you at Sercheros.com. That's Sercheros.com.
If you're thirsting for It's Only Tuesday, that meeting should have been an email, and really need something to go your way level of refreshment, we definitely have that. When you're feeling the heat, Circle K makes your day.
This is DawgNation Postgame, brought to you by Sercheros, Georgia Spa Company, Circle K, and the UGA Bookstore.
We'll get right back to phone calls here. Brandon Adams with Jeff Sentell. Kaylee Mansell going to join us in a minute, too, plus a lot more of you as well. You're mentioning something I didn't even realize, that on the final knockdown play, I was really hustling just to get in position so I could run down here and get ready for the postgame show. The Jaden Riddell was actually in on that defensive sequence for Georgia.
Yeah, it was really funny, Brandon, because, this is a third-string tight end, basically. And they asked her.
Big body guy, though.
Big body, big athlete, big vertical. And he's one of those guys that would already destroy a combine type event right there. And they asked Kirby Smart, Jaden Riddell the play, and he's like, why is he in there? And he's like, because he's the best guy out there on the team to do that. He compared Jaden to Lorenzo Carter. I remember Lorenzo Carter was that guy that could go up and knock a ball down, and it was really perfect technique. And you got to think about Jaden Riddell, a guy that I think is going to have a lot more bright spots in his Georgia career. For now, that's probably the biggest contribution he's made to this team in his 2 years at Georgia. And that was very interesting to see in your knockdown team with a lot of playmakers. Might have been Elias Williams in there. Could have been a guy like that. They chose Jaden Riddell.
Let's get back to phones here. Danny's in Sylvester. Danny, you're next up on our DawgNation postgame call-in show. Danny, how about them Dogs? Get a win against Georgia Tech, 8 straight. Now waiting to find out what happens next. What'd you think about today?
Hey, Brandon, how are you tonight? Always a great day when you can.
I'm great, Danny. Thanks for calling.
Out of Atlanta. Always a great day to
I like
the
that.
Engineers out of Atlanta. Yeah. I want to congratulations first to our defense. I mean, really the idea of a Haynes King offense not scoring a touchdown, that's massive. That's huge. I mean, just to think about him not being able to put any points on the board at all with a touchdown. I like that. And my question today is I really wanted to get your take on the huge number of design runs that Gunner seemed to be in the play call in the night. We went through that last year with getting Carson Beck hurt, and you've got this plethora of running backs, and I'm just curious to see what your take on why we would continue. And it seemed to be a lot of those runs. I know there some were RPOs, or he makes the choice, but he seemed to have to be running down the field a lot tonight, and I just wanted to kind of get your take on that.
Yeah, Danny, I think it's a great phone call and a great question. He mentions the large number of design runs, and look, I think this is clearly something they'd seen from Georgia Tech on film, and it speaks to, Jeff, what I was saying a little earlier, is it's almost like Tech's inability to stop the run, and this is an oversimplification. I don't deny this, but it's almost like Tech's inability to stop the run became something that Georgia got up in their own head about, and they were going to be so conservative with, a lot of this was from the very jump. It was almost Frank Sinkwich single wing type stuff. It's just snap and go. Clearly they came in tonight with the idea of doing a lot of that, and Gunner had a pretty good game on the ground. 42 yards rushing is not a bad effort on the ground for him, but a lot of this came at the absence of the efficient pass plays that have kept the Georgia offense moving for the last few weeks. That wasn't there. I think the sheer number of design runs give you an idea that Georgia had a pretty particular game plan for what they were trying to do against Tech today.
I feel like they saw what some of the ACC's backs were able to do against this Georgia Tech front, and they looked at the situation with Chauncey Bowens. Kirby Smart said today he could have went today, but they didn't really need to use him if they needed to pull him out of the pen. But, Josh McCray is not as explosive as Chauncey Bowens, and there's a clear difference there, Brandon. I don't know how you think. There's a clear difference.
And McCray's in much better, to my eyes, in much better shape now than he was to begin the season, and I'm glad to have him for Georgia on the stretch run, but couple of moments in which Bowens probably finds green grass and probably runs away from a defender. That's just not really Josh McCray's game.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed this, but it seemed like to me down on the sidelines that they tried to overthink it a little bit, and they got McCray out on the edge. But I don't think Brendan, that's what he does really well at all, either catching the football or just giving him like a toss play.
Yeah, the late game toss sweep for a guy that's not going to make that play was unbelievably risky. And look, there were some curious decisions today. We've already talked about the odd sequence near the end of the first half where Georgia squandered probably 20 seconds that ruined its chance of scoring a touchdown. In particular, the toss sweep play or the pitch play to Josh McCray, that's a really strange decision.
It is. And I mean, you sit there and you see those plays, Brandon, but what goes through my mind is like, what's Chauncey doing with that play? I think Chauncey's getting to the edge. I think Chauncey is getting through the hole, and he's making guys miss or barreling through them. I don't think that's Josh McCray's game, but Georgia kind of looked at personnel and they said, all right, McCray can do a lot of these things some of these ACC backs have done, and he can put his foot in the ground and everything and go. And I will say this, man, this felt at times, and I don't know what to chalk it up as, but this was, again, a very true rivalry game, a very physical game. And you see a team like Georgia Tech that tries to win the physical battle with Georgia, Brandon. Not a lot of teams try to that, but Brent Key's built his program of they're going to try and win the physical battle with the Georgia.
Yeah, they played hard. I don't have anything to say other than Tech tonight played very hard, and they can hang a banner for another close game against Georgia. I know they're really proud of those. Dalton Dawg, you're next up on the DawgNation Postgame Call-In Show. Dalton Dawg, we love that part of the state. Gorgeous up there. What'd you think about Georgia here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this afternoon?
Well, I mean, it's always great to beat Tech. I mean, seriously, the heck with them. You look at tied the longest win streak in the series. I mean, in the 50s, Tech beat us 8 years in a row. Tayron Sapp scores a touchdown, and Georgia retires his jersey. I mean, they wrote a poem about him, the drought breaker. I mean, really. I mean, Tayron Sapp was a good player. I mean, a great player, but I don't think, we've had some better than that since then, and they don't retire jerseys anymore. But it was a great win. I think special teams are good. I think Thorson kicked pretty good. I think Peyton kicked, field goals good. We kicked the field goals when we had to. I don't think our screen game was there at all. I mean, they were Tech definitely give Tech a little credit. I think their defense played well against us. We had a bad night. Run the ball good. Offensive line was banged up, but hey, we snuck it out, won a football game, and anytime you beat Tech, come on, man, that's great. I mean, it's go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Good phone call. Appreciate that. And obviously the Georgia defense, a big reason why. So much so that we're going to make that defense, the entirety of the defense, this doesn't happen a ton, but we're going to make the entirety of the defense our ServPro Gameball recipient because of holding this Tech offense that came in as one of the nation's best inside the top 20 in America in scoring points per game. Georgia tonight held them to 9 points. That was big. This Georgia defense will walk away with the ServPro Gameball. Real team effort tonight for Georgia on defense. That was a great thing to see. Let's get Michael in Boston. You're next up on our DawgNation Postgame Call-In Show. Michael, how about them Dogs? Great to have you joining us. I got to tell you, I feel like we got some Boston weather down in Atlanta right now. It is cold here today. I am dreading walking out of this indoor stadium to go back to my car because it is cold down here in Georgia. But I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate you being a part of the show today.
Hey, thank you, BA. Thank you. Thanks for taking the call. Yeah, man. I'm up here. It's cold. The weather is a big difference up here. It's like tonight was like our Ohio State, Michigan. Not to play the most aggressive card first, but it is always great to get a win against Tech. I mean, they're an outlier for two reasons. The SEC dance wise. The strength of schedule, late in the season always. It's just like it's positioned for them to take hold and get it if they can. So just like the previous caller's point, man, it's great to get a win against Tech always. Gunner, he only threw the ball 21 times. I mean, the swing passes he looks good on. That pass to Branch for that 20-yard completion, it was dialed. I agree with the interception, though. I mean, it is what it is. I think momentum matters. Last week against Charlotte, it's just no reason to get up for it. And it's, he's fighting. It's his first starting season. And, he's a DGD through and through. And, Bobo, creative or not creative in the second half. I mean, kind of agree with that too. But I mean, hell, we're 11-1. I'd much rather be be us up on top tonight than us, scratching our heads that, that the nerds beat us. So, I'm pumped to have the dub.
That's a great phone call. I'm really happy you say it the way that you do, is that whatever conversation we're having after another win against Georgia Tech. And as you said, Jeff, when you first joined us, 11-1 the regular season. I don't mind telling our audience, I don't mind telling you, I didn't have Georgia 11-1. I had Georgia probably going 10-2. I thought this was an incredibly difficult schedule. It's proven to be that, in some respects, even more difficult than maybe some people thought it would be. And yet Georgia got 11 regular season games. We believe that Georgia's got more wins before this season's done. But just getting these 11, I do think that's a really big deal. I really do.
Brandon, I don't know if you've made notice of this. I know you always look for ways to kind of kick a rival, I guess, a little bit. The streak should be 9, if not for that COVID year. That one got taken away. But and I know you're a man that's a stickler for tradition as well. I don't know if you've seen this, but what Georgia has done, and I guess it started with Richard LeCount early in the Kirby Smart era. Somebody finds a dry erase board, right? And they write, we run this state, and they carry it around and say, 1 million people take all of our picture, Brandon. That has grown into a true Georgia Tech tradition, to the effect that tonight I counted at least 2 fully involved dry erase boards with the same message that was just rotating amongst the Georgia team tonight. How do you feel about that?
Instead of we run this state, it's more like rerun this state, because it's that same clip that plays year after year after year. I feel great about that. We showed some of this on DawgNation today. Look back through the years. First of all, Andrew Smart's really grown up, because a lot of these images, and you see those right now, are him as he's gotten older. But yeah, I think we run this state. It's a very low-tech tradition, but the fact that's become a tradition, I think that's pretty fun.
I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, Andrew used to be on people's shoulders, and now nobody could probably pull that off.
He would walk into the stadium tonight. He was taller than Kirby.
Yeah, and I mean, Kirby was so unbothered tonight, Brandon. I don't know if you saw this, but when Kirby took the field, he took the field in readers tonight, where he's like, you know what, this is Georgia Tech.
Not, with all due respect, listen, he's a lot more handsome than I am. The readers are not his best look.
And he's got his jacket on, too. And then
it's not his best look.
He walks over to Mary Beth, though, and he takes the readers off. It's pretty funny how that works right there. Gives out, starts hugging his neck.
There he is walking right there.
You know, one of the things about Kirby, we're not used to this Kirby. Brandon, are you ready for this Kirby Smart right here walking into games? But you know what? He could walk in with a trash can on his head if he keeps beating Georgia Tech like this.
I certainly think that's the case. Speaking of Kirby Smart, we also heard a little bit from him earlier. Jeff mentioned this. We did not see Chauncey Bowens. Got a big game from Nate Frazier. Where do things stand, depending on when Georgia's next game might be? This is what Kirby said about Chauncey Bowens a little earlier.
He could have played. Chauncey could have played. He was banged up and was limited during the week. It was one of those deals that he didn't get a lot of reps during the week. We felt like the other guys had more reps. Josh had a really good week, and those are the guys we went with. But he was hobbled some during the week.
So hobbled some during the week, and obviously, look, Georgia got a big effort from Nate Frazier. You were happy to see Josh McCray provide what he did, but pretty clearly it would have been nice to have the extra dimension that Chauncey Bowens could have provided, and you see the numbers on the screen for what Georgia was able to do there. Big day for Nate Frazier.
But look at Josh McCray. I don't know if he's had 13 carries all season, Brandon, and he has 13 carries tonight. Not even, 3-4 yards per carry right there. And, I mean, that's the difference. You mentioned Gunner Stockton had Brandon, I don't know. Maybe you have a better vantage point up in the press box. But Cash Jones gets 1 carry for 1 yard, and that is the fourth down.
A dangerous fourth down play where he just barely got it. I think he got it, but he barely got it.
And Tech had to review it, but I was just like, I'm sure they caught Georgia Tech off guard with that one. And no offense to Cash Jones, because he's made a lot of plays for Georgia. He is a great pass protector, great special teams player, but very curious to drop the call there, and on a night when Georgia had a lot of hot hands in the run game.
Yeah, so the most that McCray had before tonight was, if you go back to the Tennessee game, where he actually played a really big role for Georgia that day, found the end zone a couple times, 7 carries in that game against Tennessee. Anything else jump at you for today that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
Well, I mean, it's just, one of the things I think we've covered really well is, Brandon, I feel like Georgia's margin for greatness. You know, you lose a Drew Bobo, right? You remember how this team was still trying to find its way until Ernest Green came into the game, and he came back to the team about midway through, and then you got Monroe Freeland on the other side. Brandon, I think George and Kirby Smart made a point in the postgame press conference to emphasize how important Ernest Green has meant to this football team. He's going through a lot of tough stuff right now in his personal life, and he appreciates the way Ernest Green continues to provide value for Georgia and its football team. One thing that's just out of the blue, Brandon, I don't know if you saw it, but did you see Juan Gaston lined up?
I did. So Gaston comes into slot position. He goes in motion. It's a running play that goes nowhere, but definitely, obviously, this is shades of what Alabama's also done too.
Caden Proctor,
with Caden Proctor. Gaston's clearly an athletic big man, so maybe just giving future opponents something to think about. You wonder, will you see that again? But, I mean, he really wasn't a huge factor in the play. He goes in motion. Georgia ran the running play essentially away from him. He was more eye candy than anything else.
You know what, Brandon? You know what went through my mind when I saw that? I mean, I thought that Todd Hartley and Mike Bobo have been watching Darnell Washington.
Oh, my gosh,
in the NFL, and they're like, let's get this big boy out here with some big boys in front of him.
Well, it's also a huge trend in the NFL now, too, not to be ball knower guy, because clearly I'm not, but you see a lot of NFL teams playing with 6 offensive linemen now. That's become a huge trend in the NFL. And so getting creative with putting a 6th lineman in the game, whether it's a Darnell Washington or an actual lineman, I think there's going to be more of that in football. It's just you see a lot of these really heavy sets now in the NFL.
Well, I mean, Darnell even admitted to it, Brandon. He copped to it that he's like 6'7", 315, 318 right now.
I've always said it. If he would have just played offensive tackle, he would have been Orlando Pace, would have made $100 million.
He's still got a chance to, but maybe he's going to let that dream fizzle, and then he's like, okay, I'll go play tackle now. But Juan Gaston, Brandon, he's about 6'7" at about 340 right now. Not too far a cry from that.
When he lines up in the slot, it is noticeable.
Yeah. And I mean, you got a lot of stuff to think about. Georgia, the boys afterward, Brandon, they said they're going to rest up, they're going to recover, they're going to watch a lot of football, and then they're going to figure out kind of what they're doing with everything else like that. There was some really nice. We've got a lot of the post game video for you on the DawgNation YouTube channels. I thought Nate Frazier was really good. People asked him about, hey man, you're running really hard right now. Do you think this Georgia run game's coming around like it's been in the past? And Nate's like, no man, I got a long way to go to get to where we're there with a lot of those really great guys. And somebody asked him about the plays he made, and he's like, man, all I do is I get that ball and I run as hard as I possibly can.
No doubt about that.
And he's like,
you see him in warm-ups.
He's like, I run for the guys that are on my sideline. I run for this football team. And Brandon, I mentioned this on my social media, Brandon. Everybody thinks these highly rated All-Americans are supposed to come in and they're supposed to be finished products. Well, Nate Frazier was the number 3, the number 2 running back in the country. Brandon, he has got demonstrably better at identifying the areas where he's not strong, and he's made them stronger throughout the course of his
holding on to that football today, too, by the way.
I tell you, I was watching him tonight, the way he ran when he was getting a lick and he was getting struck by the Georgia Tech defense, and I thought to myself, if that young man improves the way he did this year, next year for his 3rd season at Georgia, he's going to be a bona fide All-SEC back.
I think that's exactly right. Jeff, great stuff. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate that. We're getting ready to hear from Kaylee Mansell coming up in just a moment. She spent some time with the Georgia Tech coach Brent Key. That's pretty interesting. We'll also give you highlights if you want to relive the big moments from the game, including a lot of stuff from Georgia defensively. All of that coming up in a moment. By the way, before any of that, speaking of the Georgia defense, how about the courageous effort for C.J. Allen just being back on the football field after what he's been through, overcoming that knee injury? Was he at his 100% best? I don't know that he was, but clearly it was an emotional lift for Georgia just having him out there. And moments ago, Kirby Smart had the opportunity to talk about what C.J. Allen's presence meant to UGA here today.
Pretty amazing. I mean, the sacrifice he made, first of all, he chose to get the surgery done immediately, as fast as possible. He knew that would give him a chance at coming back for this game, and he really wanted this game. Kid from just south of Atlanta, and you know, I didn't think he would be able to, but he's wired different. I mean, this kid, like, just wired different. He came over here in high school and worked out every day he could during camps and just wanted to get better. So when I saw him out there on Monday, Tuesday doing a little bit, and then Wednesday doing more, and then Thursday he was ready to go. So you know, it's a credit to him and who he is and how much he loves this program, because not a lot of kids would have done that coming off that surgery.
I think that's exactly right. He was credited with the tackle for loss today, by the way, so was making some plays, just getting back. Truly a testament to everything that he's about, his character, his toughness, a football player. That is incredible and strong words from Kirby Smart, praising C.J. Allen for the effort he brought here tonight. And obviously, as Georgia moves into a postseason situation, whatever that looks like, clearly C.J. Allen going to need to be a big part of that. So we hope that his recovery is ongoing. We'll get ready to bring in Kaylee Mansell. And as we do, I want to give you a funny exchange here as a reporter a moment ago has a chance to ask Georgia Tech coach Brent Key about his team and its efforts when it comes to running the ball. Key has a tendency to be a little deadpan and pretty sarcastic and very terse, more so than Kirby Smart, when he wants to be. Well, in this particular case, he did want to be. You might get a little bit of a laugh out of this. Let's see that with Kaylee Mansell, and then we'll hear from Kaylee after that and see some highlights too. This from a moment ago.
Coach, you talked a little bit about just the running game. And 69 yards you guys had in this. What running game?
So there you go. Very to the point. Brent Key says, what running game? He does that a lot. I don't think that's as funny as he thinks it is. When it's so short, you can barely even play the clip. Like, I know he's trying to be tough guy coach, but it just does. It falls more flat than I think than he realizes. You were in the room with him. What was his reaction to? Listen, they've played close, and I know how proud they are of these close losses to Georgia. They can hang another banner for a close game against UGA. But what else did Brent Key have to say?
I'm going to be really frank about this here. Brent Key's post-game press conference was about like this game. Boring. Absolutely nothing. And maybe some of that was the types of questions that were asked, because there really wasn't that much about Georgia. The only thing he gave credit to was the Georgia pass rush, but just like that clip, very short, very brief. Also, too, this is first world problems, but I just have to let you guys know, Brent Key talks in a whisper. So low, you can't even hear what he's saying.
Maybe he's got a bad voice like I do.
I don't know. I mean, it was just beyond me. I'm just sitting there trying to understand what he's saying. I mean, maybe some of that was just frustration and the emotions and just trying to hold yourself together and compose yourself. But in talking to some of the Georgia Tech reporters, apparently this is his routine after a loss. It's just keep it low key, try to get out of there, keep it short and sweet. But I mean, yeah, that was the saltiest, most sassy version that we got of Brent Key, and so you can tell that kind of says a lot.
So what else stood out to you about today? Obviously not exactly a thing of beauty from Georgia, but as we've been saying, still 8 straight, 11-1. The defense was, I thought, remarkable, especially given what Tech has been doing against every defense it's played all season long. To keep them without a touchdown today, I think that's amazing. I don't want to lose sight of that. But overall, I said this to Rodrigo Blankenship, I'm a little greedy. I wanted Georgia to come out here and really look like the best version of itself, maintaining the momentum it's had for what I feel like is the last 3 games at least. They didn't really do that.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine at the end of the day. You didn't have Chauncey Bowens, and I thought Josh McCray did a good job, but obviously he's not Chauncey. They also had one less day to prepare for this holiday weekend rivalry game. I think the one thing that stood out to me on the stat sheet was Georgia's time of possession, which is almost 10 more minutes than Georgia Tech, which is the reason that Georgia was able to hold on to it. But looking back at last year's 8 overtime game, Georgia Tech absolutely dominated the time of possession in that game, and of course Georgia pulls out the overtime win thanks to a big play by Dan Jackson. But I thought that at least that's what Georgia did right tonight. They did have control of the clock. Just the passing game was disappointing, but they've been on such a roll, and I know we would have liked to see them do that again, but at the end of the day, they got the win. And in this scenario and in this game, closing out the regular season, yeah, it wasn't pretty, but that's really what all you could ask for.
I'm sure you've talked about this on your various shows, including DawgNation at large, but I don't think you and I have talked about this. Do you want Georgia to play in the SEC championship?
No, I do not. I would rather them not play and then get the first round playoff game at home. That way you can take some of that momentum with you. The way I see it now, if both the favorites win, Georgia will not get the bye if they don't play in the SEC championship. I think the committee would move them to 5. You get the 5-12 game, get to host that at home, and then go play number 1 in the Rose Bowl. Go ahead and take them out. So I would rather Georgia not, and I know that's controversial, but that's just how I feel.
So assuming that number 1 is Ohio State, I'm not saying that Georgia couldn't beat Ohio State. Georgia certainly shouldn't be afraid of them. Ohio State really hasn't had a lot of dominant performances. But if there was one team I would like to be positioned on the opposite side of the bracket from, I do think Ohio State's probably it.
I mean, yeah, but also, too, by far and away, Georgia would be Ohio State's toughest test. Georgia has been very battle-tested, play a lot of high-powered offensive teams, and I don't know, I just feel like maybe this would be a bigger test for Ohio State than it is Georgia.
I think that's probably a fair point. Well, listen, I think it also is the toughest team that Georgia's played all season long, too.
Yeah, but I mean, when you think about it, looking back on the schedule, Ohio State's toughest game was Texas at the very beginning of the season. So I think that Kirby Smart would be ready. And also, too, part of me wants that first-round playoff game. That way you've got more momentum going your way. So at least for me, I would rather than miss out on the SEC championship. But like I said on DawgNation at Large earlier this week, I do believe that the most likely scenario is that either Texas A&M or Alabama's going to get upset, and Georgia's going to be right back here next week.
Yeah, fair to point out both the teams that played for last year's national championship, Ohio State and Notre Dame, both played in the first round of the college football playoff. That's a fair point. Jeff, happy Thanksgiving.
I did have a happy Thanksgiving, but also I still think it's Saturday. Like, we've been here all day, and in my head, it is still Saturday.
I know what you mean. Well, good stuff all day long, great stuff. And speaking of great stuff, it was great for Georgia to also get this win to close out the regular season against Georgia Tech. And if you're just showing up, maybe you want to go back and relive some of the top moments, what do you say we get ready to do some of that right now? We'll look at the highlights, including a lot from the Georgia defense. And it got started early for this Georgia defense. Coming out on the field, by the way, how about Gunner Stockton coming through that tunnel? Tech pinned against its own end zone to begin the game, and the big pass rush right there from Gabe Harris. A lot of folks thought it should have been a safety. Intentional grounding in the end zone, maybe 2 points for Georgia. That's not what happened. And then it's going to be the Georgia defense coming back again. Christian Miller, first man through, got his hands on Haynes King. King goes down. King's been good against almost everybody, not as much of that against Georgia. But struggles for quarterback. Also, you have to be honest, there was some of that for Gunner Stockton here too. Rare interception from him, but that set up Georgia Tech on a short field, but ultimately only results in a field goal. Then Georgia would come back. How about the day from Nate Frazier? More than 100 yards on the ground from him. Long run there. That would help get Georgia on the board for the first time, setting up one of 3 field goals for Peyton Woodring. It was 3-3 at that point. Zachariah Branch, terrific performance from him. Just an electrifying wide receiver. Give him the ball, he's going to make something happen. He did that there. And then, of course, getting Georgia at the doorstep of the goal line, that would create another opportunity for Zachariah Branch. And this one's going to be a move for the ages. How about the move there, putting a Georgia Tech player on the turf, breaking ankles, as they like to say. Georgia found the end zone. It was 10-3 at that point. Nate Frazier time once again. Frazier on the ground was so impressive. And, of course, this set up another Georgia field goal. You're talking about a 13-3 Georgia lead. That's what it would look like going into halftime. Second half, more of that Georgia defense. And another play that everybody's going to talk about, perhaps shades of Malachi Starks doing this against Oregon to begin the 2022 season. Ellis Robinson has his second straight game with an interception. This one was athletic, as you're going to see. Impressive there from Georgia. Then we told you C.J. Allen got a tackle for loss today, playing on a bum knee, coming off injury. Courageous to even be back out there. But C.J. Allen gave Georgia more than an emotional lift. Gave him a big performance, too. Quintavious Johnson does the same thing. He wasn't being faked out at all on those play fakes and everything else that Haynes King's been famous for. No, he was all over it all day today. Peyton Woodring would also get his third field goal shortly after that. This one from 50 yards out. And Georgia's up 16-6. And, of course, Tech would have one more shot. And as Jeff Sentell did a good job describing for us a little earlier, Jaden Riddell, one of the guys that got in there to help block that. You see him even getting a little bit of a celebration right there. And then speaking of celebrations, Georgia gets to say, we run this state for an 8th straight year. What an incredible accomplishment. Georgia gets the win against Georgia Tech. 16-9 was the final. Great job by Cody Chaffins putting those video highlights together. And by the way, if you missed any part of that, you can go to the DawgNation YouTube page and you can see that. Plus all the Georgia players that talk about the win, the full press conference from Kirby Smart. We certainly giving you plenty of that. Georgia finished off the regular season. Now we get to sit back and wait and see what happens. Does Georgia play next Saturday? Does Georgia get the home playoff game? Does Georgia put a run together to make a deep push into the college football playoff? Well, we would all agree probably needs to play better than it did today in order for that to happen, but we also know that Georgia's got the capability of doing that. And frankly, after so many games this year, when the Georgia offense got a chance to play the hero, it was nice today to see the Georgia defense getting back to form for a Kirby Smart team and doing just that today. 8 straight against the Yellow Jackets. We love that. Enjoy your weekend. You get to relax and just watch some college football tomorrow, and I got to tell you, I am very excited about doing that. I am looking forward to that. And, oh, yeah, by the way, another thing that's played out throughout the day, you saw Mama Curtis on the X platform. There's also a chance here that Georgia's in a little bit better spot with Jared Curtis than it felt like we might have been 10 hours ago. So that is also something we'll be talking about a lot this week. We live for this time of year. Georgia's 11-1. They are right smack dab in the middle of all of it. Got some stuff to work on. We don't dispute it. But get a chance to do that work as an 11-1 team, whipping all of its rivals. 9 straight against Tennessee, 9 straight against Auburn, long winning streak against Florida, and now 8 straight as well against Georgia Tech. What a cool thing that is. Y'all have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you to Jay, the entire team, Kaylee and Jeff here, Cody working all day long, put a lot of the video that you've seen on the screen. A lot of people make this show possible. I'm thankful for all of them, but I'm mostly thankful for you. Happy Thanksgiving. Georgia wins 16-9. A lot of coverage throughout the weekend, and then back Monday for Dawg Nation Daily. How about them Dogs, and how about a college football playoff on the way for UGA? Have a great night, everybody.